Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're not too sleepy or tired at the end of the day, but hopefully what I'm going to say might energize you somewhat, and I promise also not to talk at great length. I have a 5-minute introductory audiovisual, followed by probably a 5-minute presentation. There might be some overlap between the audiovisual and the presentation, for which I apologize. And then, if there's a question and answer session, I'll be happy to answer any queries you may have. Before we start the presentation and the AV proper, just a few points. The Dilmah brand was founded only in 1988. So my father, Fernando, who founded it, my brother and I are just following in his coattails, but hopefully in the years to come we'll add some genuine value to the brand. He was 58, so in 1988 when he founded the brand, he was already 58 years of age after 30 years of bulk trading. So the point is that it's never too late. I mean, people have been saying the cinnamon industry has been around for so long, what have we done, have we value added, and so on. But it's never too late, I mean, to start branding and so on. There are also multiple facets to a brand. It's not only about the product quality, but as you will see in the Dilmah presentation, the brand has a real personality in terms of what it does for the community, what it does for the environment. And when you have that personality allied with the quality, which Ceylon tea has and cinnamon definitely has, consumers remain loyal to the brand because they want to consume a brand that they empathize with, that they identify with, and they feel good consuming, not only for its taste and packaging, but also for the values that that brand stands for. Like cinnamon, Ceylon tea, or like tea, cinnamon, has amazing properties. I mean, pretty much everything we grow in Sri Lanka with its cashew, spices, even rubber, I understand, has special properties. And tea and cinnamon have a lot in common. But we are unfortunately in trading mode. In tea also, despite whatever advances we've done with branding, is still very much in trading mode. And I hope that cinnamon, with this initiative by the NDB and by some of the other leaders, like Sharda and his team, are really going to drive hard to add value to what is increasingly coming in the forefront, the concerns with coumarin and cassia and so on in certain markets where the distinction between true cinnamon and cassia is becoming very clear. So I hope that is going to happen in the future. Now, one of our plantation companies also has extensive extents of cinnamon, but frankly, we are doing it in the very traditional way, quilling. Is that really adding value? Is the consumer at the other end, or the trader, appreciating that the value, the fact that you're spending 900, 800 rupees a kilo in a very laborious process, is that appreciated overseas? Is that what we should be doing? Or should we be just cutting out a couple of points in the whole chain and supplying maybe in powdered form or liquid form or whatever? The other couple of quick comments I'd like to make is, when we look at branding, we should go after the sophisticated markets. If you look at the tea industry, sad to say that we are only supplying, I did a mental calculation, about less than 10% of global purchasing power from the amazing industry that the British left us, where they supplied Ceylon tea to all the empire markets, North America, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, obviously. We are now left with about 5 or 6 countries in the Middle East where 80% of our teas are going. So our teas are going to markets that don't necessarily appreciate its points of difference. So with cinnamon, we could say that Sri Lanka, the garment industry has taken the same angle with garments without guilt. Working conditions are such, we don't have child labor, unions are encouraged, working conditions are good, and so on. So it's an amazing location to supply an ethical product that's actually packaged at source. And that, as you will see in the Dilmah AV, is one of the significant strengths that we are playing on, which I think cinnamon also should do. Because if you say that your product is processed, is packaged at source, there are no middlemen, all the value added is retained in the country, it's fed back to the local communities, that's the ideal model. And allied with the unique quality attributes that Ceylon cinnamon has, I think it's an unbeatable combination. What it needs is the drive and the actual passion to get to that stage. So I'll play first the AV.
Dilmah tea is the outcome of a quest by a tea maker who devoted his life to tea. In the 1950s, Meryl J. Fernando witnessed firsthand the commoditization of tea. Ceylon tea blended with cheaper teas for profit, resulting in the devaluation of Ceylon tea and the exploitation of workers in the tea industry. He made a pledge then that he would bring back pure Ceylon tea by adding value to tea at origin and marketing it under his own brand. He also wanted to make his tea a truly ethical one, going beyond profit in seeing business as a matter of human service. With perseverance and sheer determination, he established Dilmah in 1988, marketing single origin pure Ceylon tea picked, perfected and packed at source and shipped direct to consumers around the world. Merrill gave the name Dilmah to his tea, combining the names of his two sons, Dilhan and Malik. Dilmah is built on family values: integrity, tradition, quality, our customer, ethics, and sustainability, which are embodied in the 6 pillars of Dilmah. While upholding the centuries-old artisanal tradition of making tea in the orthodox way, Dilmah rejects CTC, which is a modern shortcut that produces soulless tea. Tea made in the traditional manner offers an infinite variety of tastes and hues, each with its own character and personality, while preserving the natural goodness and health benefits in tea. Although committed to tradition, Dilmah is the leader in tea innovation. Dilmah pioneered the concept of single origin tea. The Vatta boutique tea range offers single region and single estate teas that celebrate the terroir in tea. The tea series designer Gourmet Teas present a variety of teas with style and elegance to a new generation of tea drinkers. The Tea Maker's Private Reserve presents an eclectic selection of teas selected for their excellence. Each tea is selected with care, pride, and passion, reflecting the values of Dilmah. The Dilmah School of Tea was established to share the pleasure of tea with tea aficionados and hospitality professionals to further their understanding of this versatile herb. In 2009, Dilmah partnered with the Institute Paul Bocuse in establishing the first international tea school, L'École du Thé, at the Institute in France. The Dilmah 7-star luxury tea service is acclaimed as one of the finest, bringing innovations such as thé culinaire, chefs and the tea maker, real high tea, mixologists and the tea maker, and tea in 5 senses to the hospitality industry through the exploration of tea gastronomy and tea mixology. What started as a modest tea company is today one of the top 10 tea brands in the world. Dilmah factories are equipped with state-of-the-art machinery, and the company is certified with ISO, HACCP, BRC, kosher, halal, and other leading certifications. Consumers around the world are now able to enjoy single origin, pure Ceylon tea made in an ethical manner. Merrill's pledge of making his business a matter of human service is fulfilled through the work of the MJF Charitable Foundation and Dilmah Conservation. The foundation touches the lives of over 10,000 people each year through support for the underprivileged and differently abled in areas of healthcare, nutrition, education, and empowerment. Dilmah Conservation is working towards a more sustainable use of the environment by encouraging biodiversity conservation, species and habitat restoration, and raising awareness on species on the brink of extinction. Each customer is a part of the MJF Charitable Foundation and Dilmah Conservation. Thank you.
I just want to make it full screen. How to make it full screen? Yeah. Good. So you may have picked up from that AV that there are some, very common attributes between Ceylon cinnamon and Ceylon tea. Now, the whole origin of the Dilmah brand was on single origin Ceylon tea. What my father did was taking the product to the consumer and explaining its benefits. But the product itself, the intrinsic single origin Ceylon, the values and the quality of the product, which we've had since 1864, is really what did the selling. It's just that consumers were not able to get their hands on the product, which may be the case for Ceylon cinnamon also, where they may not know the difference. Cinnamon is cinnamon, but there has to be a strong educational process. And Ceylon is a very powerful name. It has been due to promotion by, from the 1920s of Ceylon tea. It has a huge amount of value, and in the food industry, I would say more so than Sri Lanka. Ethical, there were other links between how we produce cinnamon and how tea is grown in Sri Lanka in terms of the conditions and so on. There is this fair trade that some of you may be familiar with, which in our view is simply humbug, because all that happens is all the value addition happens overseas. The producer is paid a small premium and it is sold at a much higher price out there. Whereas if we say that the cinnamon that we produce is packaged at source in the finished form, there is a significantly higher appreciation by consumers if we can get the message across to them. There was also, you may have picked up, CTC versus Orthodox. Orthodox is 95% of the teas that we produce in Sri Lanka. CTC is what most of the rest of the world produces, which is a quick process designed to give quick color at the expense of flavor and taste. So that could be linked to the cassia versus true cinnamon, that whole argument there. Innovation, the presentation will explain a bit more. Also family, most of the businesses here I would assume are family businesses, and that is a significant attribute in the West, particularly where people are somewhat fed up of multinationals. So that's also another card that you can play. Small family business, packaging at source. Of course, the investment is required in getting it into retail, but that also is a trump card that cinnamon producers who want to add value should follow. In terms of education, when we first started Dilmah, my father designed and put into every pack a little leaflet that explains the difference between Ceylon tea and teas from other origins, how to brew it, how it's processed, and so on. So it's very important that as you get into value addition, that you explain very clearly to the consumer what the point of difference is, because if it's a new nugget of information they picked up, they will share it with 10 others. Education is very, very important when you have a unique product. If I move on to the presentation, again, some of these aspects may be repeated but from the AV, but I'll try and enlarge upon them. The unique aspects of the Dilmah brand, again, I don't want it to look too much like an advertisement for Dilmah, but these are points of difference which have a lot of parallels with cinnamon. Our cinnamon industry, it's a labor of love, it's a lot of passion, a lot of hard work. It's a very artisanal process. It is not industrial by any means, and that is something which can be converted to consumer equity. Dilmah is the only international tea brand owned by tea growers. Similarly, if you are a grower and you have your own brand, that has significant value proposition for consumers who see it as a genuine product, no adulteration, and they also feel they're doing something good. They're giving something back to origin as opposed to a brand owner or a packer in the UK or in the US or wherever. Hand-picked, packed and supplied direct from origin. Same thing would apply to cinnamon. We could even call this a cinnamon presentation. Fully integrated from the production side to the processing. Truly traditional, authentic, packed at origin. The world's only ethical produced tea. You could just put at the top of the slide cinnamon, and there are so many parallels. Quality again, I needn't talk about the unique qualities of Ceylon cinnamon. That's really the biggest benefit that we could take advantage of. But without the complete package, it's so much harder. So if you look at Ceylon tea and Dilmah, we say it's traditional orthodox tea, picked, packed, and perfected on our own estates in the home of the world's finest tea, home of the world's finest cinnamon. It's an exact parallel. Similarly, consumers are looking at products which have been minimally processed, which have been processed as soon as possible after harvesting, and ideally at source. So if you look at wine, wine produced on the chateau now is very common, but 20, 30 years ago in Western Europe, you had plonk, which is wine produced, blended and mixed in central locations, and then the whole wine craze took off because consumers wanted something authentic that was produced on the chateau. Same thing we say with Dilmah, and the same thing we can say for cinnamon, where you can even say, look, this cinnamon comes from this particular field and was peeled by this particular person at this particular time. I mean, if you have the technology for it, it can be done, and that is something which adds a lot of value in the final analysis for the consumer. Expertise in tea, similarly expertise in cinnamon. You're looking at, in the case of my father, probably the most senior tea taster in active service. You're not basically, the sourcing is not done by a procurement person. If you look at most of the multinationals, the trading and the sourcing is done by a procurement person, not a taster. So the procurement person has $1 or $1.50, $2 budget, and he's told to buy tea from wherever in the world that fits within that budget. There is a cursory analysis of quality, but if you look at any multinational brand, if you look in year in, year out, if you look at, say, brand X, 5 years ago, the same product, 10 years ago, the same product, rapid deterioration in quality. That's how multinationals improve market share and pricing, which is a point of difference for Sri Lankan producers who should stay the course and maintain their quality and build long-term consumer loyalty. Again, family commitment to tea. I'm not going to read through the whole slide, but that is something that would apply to many of our cinnamon growers, family businesses. Consumers in the West like to see that. They like to feel that there is a face that they can identify with when they email or they write. My father spends about a third of his working day responding to consumers who write to him or who would email him because they like to feel that, that there is a linkage. Skip this. You saw in the video about ethical tea, what we do with our foundation. It's probably, we keep a fairly low profile, but it's probably the largest private foundation in the country. And the whole genesis of it was that we wanted to give back. We started on the estates, we moved to other disadvantaged communities, and we have a wide range of innovative activities for the MJF Foundation, and also Dilmah Conservation, which we had a two-day event at the Lakshman Karigama Center where we brought in our communities from across the world and highlighted some of our environmental practices because we cannot rely on government to do everything. Private sector has to lend a hand, and particularly if you have a profitable brand, you've got to put something back. Not only is that good for your country, it's good for the brand, it's important for your consumer who likes to feel, as I said earlier, that loyalty, and they like to identify with the values of the brand. They'll support you because they know that you in turn would support other disadvantaged people in your country. So this is really, I'll just, in concluding, my father, what he says is we come into this world with nothing, we leave with nothing. The wealth we acquire in our lifetime is with the cooperation and commitment of many others. So whilst we are still around, let us share that wealth with others, spread happiness and goodwill in making our world a happier place for others too. That is the thought which inspired me to establish the MJF Charitable Foundation. And in his senior years, he's 83 now, he spends most of his time with the foundation. So these are some of the innovations that we do with Dilmah Tea. You would have seen it in the video. Thé culinaire, where we cook with tea, because we found that tea was commoditized. People said, well, tea is just tea. Coffee was sexy. You go into a espresso bar, the machines are whirring away, you get lovely smells and noises and all that. So we thought tea has to fight back because tea has far more variety than coffee. Tea is like wine. Coffee, you have 3-4 varieties. If you do a blind tasting of 20-30 coffees, you really wouldn't notice much of a difference. With tea, you have that variety more so than even wine. So thé culinaire is one of our innovations, particularly working with top-end hotels like the Shangri-La, Ritz-Carlton, and so on, where we showed them the values of cooking with tea. Tea sommelier is, again, tea and bartenders, drinks with tea. Again, innovation. Real high tea is actually putting tea back into high tea. Now, all these hotels in London and in New York and Australia and so on, more traditional grand hotels, they have this afternoon high tea, which is all about scones and cucumber sandwiches and smoked salmon sandwiches and cakes. But it really started out as high tea, and they were neglecting the tea. They were serving a very average brand of tea, and it was really more about the food. So we put the tea back in high tea, and that's one of our concepts which has been very successful. And we have competitions all over the world where we have consumers and hotels competing. We have this every year for the best high tea, where the food and the drink is all connected to tea. Chefs and the Tea Maker is again an initiative where we work with top chefs. Every year we bring about 12 top chefs around the world here, and we introduce them to Sri Lanka, introduce them to Sri Lankan food, our customs, and get them to make food and teas using our ingredients. These are all things that generate excitement in the category and should be done with cinnamon also in due course. Tea in 5 senses, again, is a means of using music with tea. The Dilmah School of Tea, again, it's all about education. We partnered with the Institute Paul Bocuse. Paul Bocuse is probably the most decorated chef in the world. He's a 3-star Michelin chef in Lyon, France. And we set up a school of tea at Bocuse, and now we have 2 schools of tea every year in Sri Lanka. We get chefs, we get sommeliers, you get stewards from hotels around the world who've forgotten what it is or never had the opportunity to learn and serve tea as it should. So they come in, they get a 3-day course, they go up to their states, and they get a certificate, because unless they go out and it's like train the trainer. They'll go out and they'll train their people, and then they will convince the consumer to try all these unique teas that we offer them. So that's it. I didn't want to take too much time. I don't know if there's a Q&A session planned or... Sure? Yeah. So if anyone has any questions, Rhonda, don't ask me anything. It's going to be a difficult question. Huh? Can't you? I don't think I'm going to. So if anyone has any questions at all, please feel free to ask. And there are so many parallels, as I said, between cinnamon and tea. And let's end the way I started. We grow the most amazing product here. We grow the best cashew in the world. We grow the best and the only true cinnamon, the best Ceylon tea, any kind of spice. Yet we are still very much in trading, marketing, non-marketing mode, and we are more worried about competing amongst each other instead of competing with the brands out there and creating a franchise for our own product. So I wish all of you in the cinnamon industry the best of luck, and if there's anything we can share, I'm happy to do that.